Thank you for listening to the Maker in the Mix podcast, where we discuss design, innovation, and all things concrete.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning. How are you?
Welcome to the Maker in the Mix, episode
24.
24. Wow.
We're almost to a quarter.
That's 6 months.
Yeah.
Cool. So what are we talking about today?
We have an ultimate class in December. We've got a GFRC class in November, and so we kind of wanted to really dive into what those classes offer, and why it's not quite like other trainings, and so I think Jeff's going to talk a little bit about that, and kind of you've heard some of the origins, but not in this context. So. That's and then we're going to have some guests on in the next few weeks, which I'm very excited about. So I'll talk about that in a moment. Yeah. But yeah, so Jeff, take it away.
So I kind of want to if you know me at all, context is one of the important words that flows through everything I teach and I do, and the way I approach things is you just can't spit out a fact or a topic without painting a broader picture to understand it better. Right. When I got started 24 years ago, of course, as I said, there were no books, there were no videos, there were no products, there were nothing specialized. This was it was such an infant craft. It wasn't really an industry, it was a craft. Mm-hmm. As I started growing my own business and trying to learn how to do things, you discover that there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to consider, there's a lot to master. And over the years of teaching people, initially one-on-one in 2001, to forming CCI in 2004, the whole point of creating a school and the whole point of creating a program like what we have, the ultimate class, which is far from the ultimate mistake. It is the ultimate key to success, and there's lots and lots and lots of proof of people around the world doing this. I have many students all over the world who are extremely successful. The things that we have to deal with as makers, as manufacturers, as fabricators, as craftspeople, whatever label, whatever hat you want to wear, goes far beyond simply making stuff out of concrete, right? Naturally, concrete is the medium we express our creativity with. That's the stuff we make our product out of. But you need to know not just how to, cast a thing or how to build a mold, all of which are important. But when you're working with a material, the more you understand the material and understand how it works and understand what all the bits and pieces that you use and put in and what the differences of different tools are, the more you can grasp that and the more you're made aware of it, the more you can be successful, the more you can make every casting a production piece that your clients are going to accept, that you can cash in, basically turn a profit on, right? And that's just, to me, I used to say this in class a lot, is the concrete is like 20% of your success. And for those of you, and Caleb's one of my students, for those of you who have been doing this for some time, you understand that, working with concrete is, yes, it's fun. Yes, it can be challenging. Yes, it does occupy a big part of the labor that you do.
Right.
But it's not the be all end all. It's not a function of, well, how can I make this new shape or color or texture? It goes far beyond that. because remember, we're engaging with customers. We're running a business. We are dealing with a variety of different people, both bringing us work and then asking us for work. And they can be different people. So you could be working for or with an architect or a builder or a kitchen designer or an interior designer or a homeowner directly, or maybe you're dealing with a granite shop who has a customer who wants concrete. So you're kind of you're a subcontractor to them, basically. How do you manage all that? How do you set expectations? How do you schedule your manufacturing process? How do you deal with all the nuances of gathering the kind of information you need? How do you template a vertical wall that doesn't exist? How do you manage installation? How do you manage employees? How do you set up schedules and know how to juggle 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 projects at the same time? So it goes far beyond simply, wow, what's the latest and greatest concrete mix I should be using, or what fibers should I use, or what finish du jour somebody's trying to show me. So, I mean, you can learn a lot. Like, there are a lot of specialized classes where you can learn how to, say, trowel a piece of concrete, or do fancy non-flat rectilinear mold or something like that. These are tools. This is like learning how to. It's a specialized class, right? They're individual topics that are new tools for your toolbox, right? But we go beyond just how do you fill the toolbox. It's how do you use that toolbox? How do you run the business that needs to have that toolbox? And what are the important tools to start with? So CCI has always focused on fundamentals, and fundamentals go beyond simply the surface level of, use this particular water cement ratio, or these kind of fibers, and basically like instructions on the back of you go to the grocery store and you buy a cake mix and it's got instructions on it. So it's like, okay, you want to bake this at 350 degrees for 25 minutes, and you need to grease your pan, and you can do this or this or this. And, that's pretty cut and dried. And that's good those are great instructions to have, especially if somebody else has come up with a good set of reliable instructions for a product that you like to use and trust. But that doesn't tell you anything about how does it all work? Like, what are the implications of changing things? Because what if
why does my cake mix have eggs in it?
Yeah. Yeah. And what if I only have one egg and not two? Am I really stuck? And so from a technical standpoint, and I'm not trying to turn anybody into concrete chemists or structural engineers. I can't. That's unreasonable. But I do want to paint a broader picture of how all the pieces fit together. Okay, it's like when you buy a puzzle, you've got the big picture on the cover, on the box, so that you know what the heck you're making. You're not just given a handful of pieces and go, okay, here's your puzzle. We're going to force feed you this or hand feed you this, and you're working blind. Okay, that's hard. That's hard to do. And I don't want to say it's hard business, but this is a business of 1,000 details. And this is a hard lesson a lot of people learn. And it's not one that a lot of people like to hear. So you're not going to hear this from other folks, is you've got to know every detail of what it is, why it's important, and when do you have to pay attention to it. So when you're on step 14 of a process, you got to be thinking of step 15, 16, 20, maybe even step 30, so that you're not wasting time, undoing work, creating issues down the line, that kind of stuff, right? I don't want to dive too deeply, but those are the kinds of things we learn in class, we teach in class. It's fully immersive. We want to go through several example projects. Like one of the projects we're going to do in the December class is a real project in Caleb's house, right? It's not just, oh, we're making a fake little a fake sink that's never going to go anywhere. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that, because you should be doing that when you go home from class is practice, right? But when you see a real piece, when you go through, okay, we got to template this space, and we have to now create the pieces of concrete to fit that space, and we got to plan for, how's it going to go in, all the nuances of every step of the way, and then actually do it, right? So in 5 days, you're going from a bare site to a complete site. That's powerful. And that's something that we do. We bring to the table. We make sure that you understand that it's not just, hey, we want to sell you a product and show you how to use that product, and that's it. That was sort of the landscape, back around the time when I had put on my first conference, and we were really gathering more people in the industry. This was 2007, call it. There were a lot of, like, the decorative concrete industry, which focuses on like stamped concrete and polished and stained floors and that sort of thing. Totally different industry, very mature, very legitimate. I have nothing bad to say about it. It's just a different industry. And because this was the concrete countertop, or, the craft concrete industry as it kind of is shaped up now, because we do a lot more than just countertops. We do furniture and wall panels and stuff like that, because of the kinds of concrete we work with. They saw this as an opportunity to create products and kind of inject them into our little growing craft industry. And the issue that was at the time, and kind of still, I mean, they sort of stopped doing it, but not altogether, is that industry doesn't understand what we do. They don't understand our needs because they don't do it. And their system typically, and I'm saying there as I'm generalizing, waving my hands, is you buy everything from one company. So you buy the sealer, you buy the color, you buy the bagged product, you buy the training, you buy maybe the tools, you buy everything from them. So it's like a one-stop shop, and it fits really well. That model fits really well for the decorative concrete industry, because the contractors who work in that industry tend not to have the same goals as us in terms of being creative. Their creativity is different. They're not they're not making furniture. They're not building the kinds of forms they're not making the things that we're making. So their focus is, hey, we have a job to do. We got to show up on the job site. We got to go do it. And it dovetails more along in the system of more conventional flatwork type construction. Nothing wrong with that. No judgment there. It's just different, right? It's different. When you move into our world, the more you do this, the more you realize that, the concrete, yes, it's important. And yes, you do have to follow the instructions if you're working with a bag mix, or you're working with a product that you go gather your own sand, your own cement, and use this admixture pack to do it. Or like in the old school way I had to, and a lot of folks had to, is you go out and buy all the individual ingredients and you blend your own mix, you make your own concrete every time. That portion, it becomes a small percentage of the whole process, because you still have to, deal with, how do you create new looks for your customer? Like they want like I mentioned in the last one, they want terrazzo. Well, where do I get all the glass, and how do I process it, and where do I start, and how do I cast it? Or I want to make this big, table. What do I need to do to make it strong? And completely separately, flat. Right? Strength does not equate to stiffness. Stiffness does not equate to strength. They're both important, and that's a different topic. But it's things like that. It's like, how do you approach and solve a problem? And that problem has many different facets that go beyond simply, how do I mix the concrete and pour it in a mold? And a big challenge is inside your shop. It's not so much working with the concrete, it's mold making. We are really mold makers that happen to work with concrete. And those are a lot of the other facets we talk about. So like the two classes we have coming up, we have a 2-day GFRC class that focuses on
the material,
right? We have a few very different molds to make some very different pieces, like 3-dimensional pieces, et cetera, et cetera. So it's focused strictly on, it's more along the lines of what a lot of other places do, is you're focusing on this, but it's focused with the technical background folded in as well. It's not just the mechanics of it. And then the ultimate 5-day class is fully immersive, right? Where you are doing all the work under controlled guidance and you know, technically based back classroom time.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, it's interesting. I was thinking as you were talking about different examples of things, because, you know, some may be like, well, they make products too, right? And that is true. You know, CCI started very much as an educational only, you know.
I was very much opposed to even recommending a specific single product from anybody.
Right. And so, you know, but necessity is the mother of invention when you think about it, right? Like University of Florida came up with Gatorade. You know, University of, was it Michigan, came up with fabric forming. I mean, there are different educational bodies that have eventually, when the need has been so great that like there's no other way to deal with it, educational bodies tend to come up with products. And so, you know, that's kind of where you know, Omega came from, right? There was a need in the industry that the topical sealers that we were using really didn't fill, and that was, you know, there was an application deficiency. You know, a lot of them performed pretty well, nothing wrong with that, but they were difficult to apply. And so, you know, Jeff reluctantly decided, okay, fine, kind of throw your hands up. I guess I'll, you know, get something out there, because my charges, you know, the people that I'm charged with assisting in this career, in this business, in this craft industry, need something that is more conducive to what they do. So he developed Omega. In the same way, you know, we've got Ovation. You know, even easier to apply. Is the performance as good as Omega? No, but it is really quite fantastic for what it is. I've been, I'm going to say, pleasantly impressed with Ovation's performance, but that's neither here nor there. It was a need. The alpha products are a need. You know, I have not been able to find an ultra powerful superplasticizer, powdered superplasticizer or otherwise, until Fluidizer. So as an artisan, you know, these things are unbelievably helpful. And I think that's where, you know, it's not, you know, this is not some large company saying, oh, we're going to make something because we want to make a bunch of money. This is a small company saying we need to make something to help our people. And so I think that's the big difference between, you know, our products, which we do not mandate that you purchase if you take a class, nor are the finishes and techniques that we teach dependent on that mix. And so I think that really is the differentiator, is because we didn't go into this thinking, oh, we're going to be a products manufacturer and then we're going to teach classes. It was totally the other way around. We want to teach classes, and then we actually it seems like we need to develop some products. So let's do that. So I wanted to throw that out there as the differentiator. You know, and then as Jeff mentioned, you know, our classes are fundamental and foundational. They're not, you know, come see this mix and the finishes that, or whatever that we want to make with this mix. Here's what you can do with this mix. That's a product advertisement. What we are about is, here's a material. Now, we do use our mixes in class. Don't get me wrong. We do. We use others too, so we'll use Rapidset Simmental. We want to demonstrate more than just one avenue and way of doing this. And so we don't just use our products.
We teach a from scratch mix that, well, what if you can't, like, you're not in an area that you can get our product yet, or you don't want to, and you want to use something else because it's more convenient. That's fine. And
here's how you do that. And so it's very important, I think, to say that, like, we're not going to, like, say, oh, come to this, come to this 3-day event. We're going to charge you $2,000 and you get to learn about this bagged product. Like, that's just not something we're going to do. We're going to say, come learn the material. The product is going to be on display. If you like it, let's talk about it. But that's not the focus. Right. The focus has always been and will always be education, foundational education. So, I just wanted to say that because it's important. It's about people.
Because I've been doing this so long, from a teaching perspective and from the landscape, I have the longest running tenure of anybody, short of, the Sonoma cast stones and the Dexes and the big manufacturers who came before me. When you have a need for information, when you have a need for a resource, when you have a need for guidance, right? Think about, who are you going to invest in? This is an investment, right?
Right.
CCI was founded to support and nurture and foster. People want to do this as a business, right? I've had homeowners who come to class, take the ultimate class because they wanted to do their own countertops because it actually was cost effective for them. It's like, great. They have the tools, they have the space to do it, they have the will to do it. That's just their mindset. Great. Love it. They're not a big percentage of the folks who come to class. They're the people who want to, I've got a vision. I want to, create a business that can support my family, that I have employees that I can support, that I can fill a need for my local market. It's an outlet for my own personal creativity, all that, right? And ultimately, sort of pun intended there, come to class it's a big investment, definitely. Once you come to class, like, you got to set yourself up. So we have a lot of information, articles, guidance, things like that on, what size shop, what kind of tools do you need? How do you set things up? Who do you talk to? How do you approach an architect? How do you do a lunch and learn? If you're going to deal with kitchen designers, if that's the market you're going to be focusing on, how do you talk to them? What's important to them? How do you get a display in their showroom? If you're going to be dealing directly with homeowners, all that. So the kind of information that I had to learn on my own and figure out over the course of many years, painfully and expensively, has been distilled and condensed and refined into a body of knowledge and information that you get, not just in class, but you get as documents. And then most importantly, and I think this is the most important part, is you become part of really an exclusive group of people who have access to us to talk about, hey, I got this project coming up. Hey, I got this color. What about this? Or having an issue. So, like, I do a lot of technical support of problem solving. It's not just, hey, I want to make this particular look, right? That's not that common. What is common is, hey, I did this, in fact, I just got an email from somebody that came to class like 5-6 years ago and really hadn't done much with it for a long time. And he was doing small things, and then he decided to do like a big fireplace surround. And he had a couple issues because, well, he was out of practice. If you don't do something for a while, you kind of get rusty at it. And he got a little rusty. And so we work through, okay, it's not just here's what I think happened. It's here's what happened. Here's why it happened. Here's how to correct it. In his case, it wasn't a big deal. It was not like he had to redo the piece, but sometimes that's the solution. Is it's the way we want to work things through. Is not, talk on the phone for 5 or 6 hours, or waste a lot of your time talking back and forth and basically making you feel like it's your fault when it's not. We want to solve an issue for you because we want you to be successful. That's really the bottom line. Is everything we do, everything we create, everything we talk about, everything we promote is focused on making you as successful as we know you can be.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody the other day, about it was almost like an epiphany. I realized, this is a gentleman that's, came to class, really cool guy. And he's, been just kind of, he's on that journey of, for a while this is a side gig. He really wants it to be full time. But, how do I get in? How do I break into this market, right? And that's one thing that he and I have worked through, and I'm currently working on, helping him find the right people to get in touch with, and how to do that, all of those things. But then there's the materials end of it, and he's used some of our products, he's used some of other people's products, and he's just had a lot of questions, which is great. I hope that people have a lot of questions because that's how you get knowledge. I had a lot of questions, and I had this epiphany that, and it is silly because it's like what we do, right? But the epiphany was, gosh, if we don't really just hone in on the why and what people are doing and why it's doing what it's doing and how it's reacting and all of that, like, they're really not going to get it. It might be a 5, 6, 7 year journey to get there. And it might, we're looking to shorten the journey. Right. And, it's like there are entities and bodies out there that are, promoting much lower fiber loads than we feel are necessary. There are, much higher plasticizer doses than we feel are necessary. I mean, you go to certain, organizations to buy product, and they don't tell you, and this is across the board. This isn't like, one company is doing this thing. It's like, you don't go and get a plasticizer and realize that there's actually a strength difference if you use too much of it. If you use like an Adva product, right? This is a larger industry company, not a craft concrete industry company. But if you use an Adva product, like, they don't tell you, probably because it's not necessary in their industry, but like, they don't tell you that if you go over a 1% dose, it's going to dramatically, decrease your short-term flexural strength, right? So these are things that are not common sense, that we feel, it's like we've got to share these things, because if you don't know them, you don't know them. And if you do something that you don't know is going to cause you an issue, then it's a scratch your head, holy crap, what have I done? Why am I here moment? And you don't know how to fix it. And so, we're trying to avoid those types of moments.
That's a really good point, because, I go back to, you need to master your material. The more you understand about concrete, right?
Right.
All the tools, all the ingredients, stuff we use, super plasticizers, things like that, they're largely, especially a lot of the common ones that are used, are made for a much different market, right? The concrete industry as a whole is occupied by folks who have a deeper educational background, technical background in these things. Like structural engineers design the concrete structures, the bridges, the foundations, the roads, et cetera, et cetera. There's the specialized concrete contractors who know how to cast and finish and build the formwork and things like that. They know how to build the rebar to the specs, and they know the importance of all that manufacturing stuff, that the doers, right? And then there's the batch plants that make the concrete. They have the concrete engineers who design the mix designs based on the local ingredients, based on what the structural engineer says. Hey, we need a concrete mix that achieves a minimum of an 8,000 psi mix or a 13,000 psi mix or whatever, right? So, and then the admixture companies, for instance, the ADVA, right? ADVA is a fantastic. It's a family of water reducers. Fantastic, right? When we in this industry, and this is very true when I got started, and it's still very true now, is we're like, there's the farmers who grow the crops and they're the experts and they know how to manage everything. They got the equipment to do it. They understand the nuances of everything. And what we're doing here is cherry picking little bits and pieces, plucking it out of this greater pool of a different world. And unfortunately, there's a lot of folks who don't understand. You got a tool, but you don't know what it's really for. And we're using it for something different or outside of its normal intended use. And we're not really expert at doing it. And then all of a sudden that can become dangerous. If you're like, oh, I got this great new use a super plasticizer as an example. And a little bit adds workability. So I'm going to use a lot because I want a lot of workability. And if you don't understand, and I'm just honing on this as an example, that there is a limit to where all of a sudden, you could cause your mix to segregate. And if you don't understand what that is and why that's bad, you could be, wasting a lot of time and money in materials and things like that, or use a lot. Maybe you don't get segregation, but now you got your really fluid concrete that pours like water, but then your strength suffers, and then maybe you don't crack your piece because you demolded it too soon, but maybe you're getting some really weird shrinkage cracking because of it. And you don't know why. And that's the depth of knowledge that we can bring because we know it. I mean, again, I'm going to harp on this and I'm going to say it every time. Civil engineers are the people who are taught to know those things. I'm a civil engineer, and I'm the conduit of this huge universe of technical knowledge that's been gathered for the last century, 100 years of information or more, not just here and there, not by one particular company or whatever, but every major country on the planet researches this. And there's technical papers in every conceivable language on every conceivable topic related to concrete. And it's all an attempt to understand this material. And because it's not a singular material, it's, well, this particular mix is useful for like GFRC versus a mix. You would never ever use GFRC to say pave a driveway. Could you? It would be stupid expensive and probably not ideal. You could, but likewise, you would never use a concrete mix, say, that you would pour a driveway to build a chair. I mean, the chair would have to be very massive and it would be the wrong material. So how do you select what kind of materials to use and what kind of techniques to use and what sort of information to know how to use the tools? That's the kind of focus and knowledge base that we're bringing to instill not just this shotgun approach of I'm going to talk for 8 hours and tell you all this information that goes in one ear and out the other. It's curated knowledge of, I know because I've been there, done that. Literally, I've written the book, many books on this. What is really important right now? And then what is important later on? And I'd like Caleb to kind of speak on this because he's gone through this. 10 years ago, he came to class. I want him to tell his story and highlight his journey of all that. Like, why was it important for him? How did it benefit him to, I mean, he bought an existing concrete business. So you would think, wow, it's like buying a new car. Like, I bought a new car. All I have to do is get it, turn the key, and go. No, it's not. So tell us more about this, Caleb.
Yeah. So I did. I bought a company.
Because you bought a business that had been running for several
10
years.
years. 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah. It was started in 2003. I took class in 2013. And those of you who have heard me talk about my story, you may remember because I was on Patrick Galladay's podcast, and we've talked about this a little bit on this podcast. I bought the company with basically no knowledge and the promise of training, right? So I was intrigued by it. My predecessor, Chuck Price, wanted to get out of it and into home building as a whole. He was a general contractor. But he didn't want to see the business kind of go by the wayside. And so I took it over with him kind of as my mentor, but he just ended up being far too busy to take care of the training end of it. And so he had done some consulting with Jeff on a number of topics over the years, and so knew about CCI, and said, you know what, this is the guy. This is, if you're in this industry, Jeff is the one you ought to be trained by, which I very much appreciated that advice. At the time, I appreciate it now, actually. At the time, I was a little bit miffed that he had not held up his end of the bargain, but It turned out to be for the best. So, and so I went to the Ultimate course October 2013. So October will be 10 years, which is wild. I feel like I need to I'm having we're having a baby in October, so we're not doing an Ultimate class. That's why the class is in December, folks, and not October, because we're having a baby. And so Holland is his name, and he's going to be born October or first week of October is when Lauren's due. And so in December we should have some sort of we should toast to it. I don't know, 10-year anniversary of my first class, and we're coming up on next year, I believe, 25 years for you in the industry. So
yeah,
fun. But I jumped into this and I didn't know much about concrete. I had a very rudimentary, and I would love to throw this up on a slide, but it would take me some time to find it, but very rudimentary mix calculator that Chuck had drawn up in Excel. I still have it. It was done by cubic inches. So it wasn't how many square feet it was. This is a 10,000 batch. It was the terminology. So if I had a 10,000 batch, it was 10,000 cubic inches of concrete, and that's how much I put in my Imer 360 gas powered Mortarman. And the thing was, he didn't do any reinforcement. We're talking, this was wet cast sand mix with zero reinforcement, no metal, no nothing. So, I mean, you can maybe imagine I broke every third piece because I had no idea how to handle this stuff, and it was heavy as heck. And so I came to class not even knowing what the acronym GFRC meant. Somebody said, I think it was Brett Carragher, said it in class. It's like GFRC, in a sentence, and I'm like, what is he talking about? This is freaking Greek to me, right over my head, right? And so that should, I think that's kind of the bones of the value is that you can actually, and I did, go from 0 to 100 in 5 days. Not 100%, 100 miles an hour. I think there's always more to learn, and somebody said this to me the other day, we should talk about the quote unquote deficiencies of a short class. I mean, it's not a deficiency in that there's something deficient. It's that you cannot learn everything in 5 days. And that's why Jeff has opted to, you know what, if you come to a 5-day CCI course, you get us forever, you know, which is a mind-blowing benefit because the time is so much more valuable than what we've paid for it. I mean, I bugged Jeff for years and years. I'm still bugging Jeff 10 years later. He can attest to that. I'm probably really annoying. But, you know, the types of things that I can,
you.
Yeah, they sure can. And I love it. You know, I was talking to, I think I talked to 2 or 3 alumni yesterday. It's become a total highlight of my, you know, day-to-day life. And, you know, in fact, I've got a gentleman that's coming to December that's really you know, getting into it on his own ahead of time. So I feel like he's going to come and be like, you know, a little bit ahead of the class, which is great. It's like, if you're a Harry Potter fan, this is Hermione Granger. I feel like we're dealing with you know, he's really getting into the books. He's getting into the methods. He's asking me questions. So I can tell already this is going to be a great situation. So, but, you know, where I kind of came out of class was I went from 0 reinforcement precast to GFRC in the course of a week. And, you know, those first couple of projects were very difficult. I'm not going to lie to you. You know, there was a big learning curve even after class because you come back and you're like, oh, I don't have somebody here physically watching over me telling me what to do. But I mean, I had a cell phone and I had Jeff's number and I used it a lot. And that's one thing I think that people, less people than you would expect actually use that available resource. Because that to me is potentially the most valuable, or it's certainly one of the most valuable assets that the CCI model offers is, you know, the technical resources, the technical background, the technical knowledge, and transference of that knowledge. So, you know, this is a year and a half, 2 years ago. I called Jeff and I was like, okay, I got to make a 22-foot piece and transport it 2 hours. What's your recommendation? Like, how am I going to do this right the first time? And there are some of you who came to class in 2021 that saw that piece because it was sitting in my shop, ready, you know, waiting to go out during class. And 2 of them, I had one. It was 20. I think it was 21'6". The main section of the hearth was 38 inches deep, and over at the far end there was a 35-inch section that L-shaped back another 25 inches or so. So that was like 60 inches by 21'6" L. And it had to go into a house that's 2 hours from here.
And by the way, your casting table is not 22 feet long.
No,
so
it's 16 feet long.
That?
I seemed melamine, and that's something that we can talk about too. But that was something where it's like, okay, Jeff, I need the engineering understanding of how to do this properly. It's not, well, throw some rebar in there somewhere. It's here's how many pieces of rebar, here's where it should be, and here's how much you should, you know, realistically be able to do with the piece in this amount of time based on my calculations. Right?
I'm going to interject something quickly. Is, you know, there are a lot of Facebook groups and things like that about different kinds of concrete and different concrete furniture and this, that, and the other thing. And, you know, I look at a lot of those and I'll contribute here or there. But what I see is there's such a lack of true knowledge about the material that keeps getting regurgitated over and over again of, you know, put the reinforcing in the middle, or why does ghosting happen? Oh, because it was too close to the surface, or, you know, whatever, right? There's a lot of confident ignorance out there. Mm-hmm. And it's not.
Well, I mean, I've seen like, you know, here's how you do this very highly technical thing, and you don't really need the calculations because it's okay. And I just don't think that's
Anybody
enough.
can make small pieces. Like
Right.
if your entire portfolio is made up of pieces that are less than, say, 10 feet long,
Yeah.
you're not doing anything that a beginner can't do.
Right.
It's, can you do the big, 22-foot long piece thing, fabricate it, manufacture it, finish it, transport it, and install it flawlessly? Can you make the big 16-foot double 8-foot cantilever that has a design and load of 2,000 pounds and have it crack free? That's where the proof is in the pudding, not
Right.
a lot of hand waving and boasting, verbal boasting that has no backup. Show me
Well,
the
and I
money.
think,
The
I
proof is
think
in the success of the people and the pieces that you make.
right. I think that, there's the difference between, and I'm not tooting my own horn. I just have, I have, personal experience. So I'm going to draw on that. But, so I'm not saying, ooh, I've done this thing. I'm saying this is what CCI has afforded me. Right. So I think there's a difference between going to a finish class and being able to parrot the finish versus going to a foundations class and being able to produce things that would not otherwise be feasible or plausible. So CCI, and this is long before I had any interest in CCI from a financial standpoint, right? CCI afforded me the ability to become part of the it's like I went from student to faculty, so it afforded me that ability, right? I must have taken something from it. But it afforded me the ability to say yes to, I don't think I'm trying to look back on 10 years, and I honestly don't believe that I've ever said no to a client on the grounds of something being too difficult to do. I've augmented designs on the grounds that that's over the limits of the material, but I know what the limits are, and I think that's where that value is. So, the first piece that I quote unquote found the limits of the material really were, you may remember this, Jeff. It was kind of an angular bar. It was realistically, it was the shape of California. It was this funky gray bar, and I originally quoted it at 1.5 inches thick. And we installed it, but it had some cracks in the face coat because it was too big to resist the flexibility of a piece that large, and too thin, I should say. And so client didn't like the cracks. Obviously, the cracks happened on install. So we knew about them right then, and we said, okay, we're going to address this. And then I called Jeff, and I was like, how do I address this? And he was like, well, Caleb, you made the piece too thin. Said, cool. And so he walked me through, and that's the thing. Jeff and now me, we're available to you to step by step beside you through real projects. And that is the value. That's the ultimate value, I think, in the ultimate course, is that long-term relationship. So Jeff walked me through getting that project successfully done without any cracking. And we did that. And that client is still happy 7 years later. That piece is flawlessly installed, and it's beautiful, and it's great. Subsequently, I did a 2-inch thick, I had the limitations of, Jeff, I need to do a 20-foot countertop. It needs to be 2 inches thick, and it needs to go on the 7th floor of an apartment complex. Tell me how. And that is, or Jeff, I want to make a conference table with one base 11 feet away from the end. Tell me how. Or Jeff, I want to make it's like the 16-foot double cantilever. That started out as, Jeff, I want to make a 16-foot tensegrity table. And, Jeff's answer wasn't no, it shouldn't be tensegrity. It should have a base. And here's how we're going to. So we ended up with the look. So that has been my experience of the extreme level of value that having a structural engineer in your corner on a daily basis offers your business. and I have spent 10 years kind of being a sponge to a lot of that. And so I have a lot of that technical knowledge. I don't have my PE, right? And so I can't
You can't,
claim to
because you're
be
not
an
an
engineer.
engineer.
I can't
You
claim to
can't
be an
have it.
engineer. I don't really intend to go to get my master's in engineering at this point in my life. But I have a lot of that technical knowledge that I can get most people through a lot of things, but we've got Jeff, and that's the point. I think that, to me, and that has been the value that I've preached of this course for years and years and years before I started making money at it, is, we're not just going to tell you to tighten it until you feel comfortable on a post tension. We're not going to tell you to throw the reinforcement anywhere, because at least it's in there. We're going to tell you with realistic understanding of the material, here's where you put the reinforcement, and here's how much the piece can handle safely.
That is summarized by one of the, what would you call it? It's not a slogan, right? With CCI, one of the taglines is, it's not just how, but why, right?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody can't answer the question why, they don't understand the process. Like, if they can't say why something is done a certain way or exactly what to do and then explain why it's done that way, they don't truly understand it. They're just, okay, I did it this way, and they're drawing on pure physical past experience, which is very valuable, but it has no perspective. It has no guidance. You could be, experience doesn't guarantee that it's correct. It just means it worked that time. And as you venture forward based on experience, it's like, okay, I'm going to walk through the woods, and I've been walking through a field this whole time, and it's in the dark and I can't really see too well, but I can walk and not hit anything. And then all of a sudden, when you find a stand of trees and it's dark and you don't know the trees are there, you might run into them. And if all you're doing, especially like experiences, you're basically looking backwards, hoping that what you're doing, if you're walking backwards toward those woods, you're looking back at your long path of success. And if you have blinders on, you only see the successes. You don't see the failures, or you ignore the failures, or even worse, you don't talk about the failures. You could run into, a hole in the ground and trip and break your ankle. You could hit a tree. You could be lucky and pass through that stand of trees with no problem, and still say, hey, look, I walked through the trees backwards. You can do it in the dark. That's experience. And that's important to know where you came from and what your personal lessons are. And then when you share those lessons with other people, you're conveying those experiences. But if you don't have the larger pool of knowledge, that the education of what's going on, the things you don't know about are the things you need to know about. And that's, like, let's say, your car breaks down and you don't know anything about cars. Well, you just don't go, well, my dad used to do XYZ, so I'm going to do XYZ, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But you don't have the greater knowledge of understanding, oh, well, your fuel injectors are clogged, but your dad had a carbureted car. And so spraying, carb cleaner in your car worked. Well, you don't have a carb. You don't have a carburetor. You have a fuel injected car. And now that doesn't work. You need to go to an expert who has a deeper set of experience to draw from that you can rely on. And that expert is not just some, person who works on cars on the weekend. Maybe that's where you take it, but maybe you go to a certified mechanic because your car is under warranty, or it's going to cost too much, or the risk of you need your car to get to work, to earn a living. It's too important to just take it to anywhere. Well, bringing this full circle, if you're thinking about doing this as a business, right? You want to start a new career. You want to add on to your existing business. Is it worth gambling, learning from somebody who really doesn't have any kind of qualifications to do this? Just because I did it for a while doesn't mean I'm actually good at it, that I actually know what I'm talking about. What are your qualifications? Those are my qualifications, as well as over 20 years of doing this. So I have knowledge and experience. And Caleb has 10 years of experience doing this, plus his relationship with me. So as a package, we have a lot of experience, but also a depth of knowledge nobody else has. Nobody else really has. They can pretend to have it, but they really don't. And that's, excuse me, I'm getting on my soapbox doing a little promotion here, but I think it's really important to understand that when you are relying on a mentor, when you're relying on support, what's the qualifications of that support? And is that support actually helping you? That's an important thing to consider when you're making an investment in yourself. And everything about CCI is it's all about your success.
Yeah, and so I think there are attractive, alluring types of things that you can do with concrete that others have, made. I mean, I can think of a number of organizations that have, done classes on said finishes,
and
different cities, different companies that have done their own thing. That's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. Those are useful tools.
Absolutely. It's just not foundational.
But going to a store and buying a bunch of tools you don't know how to use, and never mind knowing how to use the tools, what are you making?
Right.
If you don't have that greater sense of knowledge, then
well, it's like if you're building a deck, where do you use a screw versus a nail, and why?
Right. Yes. Yes.
And how are you going to know that? And how do you know that the YouTube video or the expert that has a lot of experience that you go and learn from, how do you know that they know that? Did they go to, deck building school? Or, I think a lot about,
I got crooked.
Like, here's a kind of a funky example. I've been over the years a member of different denominations of church, right? And my belief is that in order to be a pastor, you should have gotten the proper education and understanding of theology. So you're not just leading people out of your feelings. And I think that is a good analogy. You, Jeff, shouldn't go build a bridge without having gotten your PE first.
Right.
Because you can't build a bridge on feelings. You can't build a bridge that's really pretty and then expect that because it's pretty, it will hold a car.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go and do heart surgery without understanding the valves and which direction they flow and how they work. And you can't find that out looking at a YouTube video. Maybe you can, but how do you trust it? What's the what's the reliability? What's the history? And CCI has, nearly 20 years of history of turning out the big boys in the industry.
Yeah.
Boys and girls, right?
If you go to the CCI website, concretecountertopinstitute.com, at the bottom of the page, we have testimonials of very successful people around the world talking about some of their success stories. So we have lots and lots. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of testimonials of people from all walks of life, retired airline pilots, you name it. And it's that's the proof is in the pudding. Is I don't know how many people in the world are doing this, but I can absolutely say for certain that the majority have learned from me somehow. And a big percentage of the people in this world have come to me personally and learned from me directly. So this is not a, yeah. Anyway,
So, it's a lot of, we kind of have to display that history and the knowledge and the reason, because otherwise, what reason do you have to trust that we know what we're talking about when we teach you, right? So it's not that, I've known Jeff for 10 years. Egotistical is not even one of the ways I would describe him. But you have to, unfortunately, in order to convey that you are actually an expert in your field, you have to be able to prove it. And so that's what we're, and so in that vein, over the next several weeks, we have some CCI alumni coming onto the podcast to talk about their experience with certainly Ultimate and certainly the relationship that we've developed with them over the years and how that's helped them in their career. So next week we've got Jason Johnstone of, I can't pronounce this properly because I don't speak French, but Beton Johnstone, Architectural. He can make fun of me next week when he comes on.
Beton.
He's Baton Johnstone, Architectural. But Jason is a good friend and a phenomenal artisan. He will be on next week. His business is phenomenally successful in this space. He's up in Quebec. And just, his vision, his business acumen, the man is a force, and I'm proud to be friends with him. And just a great guy. So he'll be on next week. I believe Diane Mullis is going to be on the following week. Pro Concrete Countertops up in Minnesota. And then following that, I think we're going to have Dylan Myers of Dylan Myers Design in Maryland. If you don't know any of these people's work, I encourage you to go look them up now because you're going to be impressed. Dylan is one of my closest friends in the industry. He actually took the same class I did in October of 2013. We've been friends ever since. And Dylan is an artist in the true sense of the word. I would say Jason is a businessman in the true sense of the word. I would say Diane is kind of a hybrid. So there's three. We've got some more that are interested in coming on to talk about their experience with the class. And I'm just really excited to have those folks on in the coming weeks, because it's one thing for us to say it, right? But we'd rather let somebody else say it and show you. We want to put our money where our mouth is. We want to show you the value that we are aiming to offer every student that comes through our doors. So, yeah. Jeff, you got anything else to add to that?
I think that's a good place to stop for today.
I think so. So tune in next week to hear Jason talk about his experience, his company, his journey, and we'll see you then.
Thanks for joining us.
Have a good day. Thanks for listening to the Maker in the Mix podcast. If you liked the content and want to hear more, please like and subscribe. Feel free to follow us on YouTube as well as Instagram, Facebook, and check out the website, www.concretecountertopinstitute.com. And of course, we'd love to see you at one of our upcoming classes. Tune in next week for more informative content. Thanks.